This is the process of how I made my recent thumbnail for TCG Pig titled Gorilla Tag Rank just got way better. I thought I'd make a time lapse to show you what the making of it is like so you can see how I make this kind of stuff. For this thumbnail, I really wanted to take inspiration from one of Maxo's thumbnails of his video, Gorilla Tag added me, so thank you to him. Right now, I'm doing a lot of the posing and figuring out exactly how I want the thumbnail to be structured, so that takes a lot of time, and both Blender and Photoshop are big parts of making thumbnails, at least for me. You'll see at the end of this video how I turn a pretty bland render into a pretty nice looking piece using Photoshop. Pig specifically asked me to have his hands up in the thumbnail, so I was trying to find the right way of posing him and still be able to fit in the ranked belts above him. You'll see at the start, the posing is a little different than it ends up being. I do this a lot with thumbnails, just know it is never final when you're making it. You can always make a thumbnail better by just doing small things like changing posing or removing a lot of clutter. That's a pro tip right there. I ended up doing this a lot in this thumbnail actually, and if I didn't remove clutter in this thumbnail, it would turn out a lot worse. Trust me, I've learned this from experience. Now I'm adding textures to all of the belts and making them look nice in Blender. I generally make things look nice in Blender and then add anything to polish an object or add some effects in Photoshop. I would say a lot of my thumbnails are Photoshop heavy. I actually just made a new project on my Behance portfolio where you can see what thumbnails of mine look like before and after Photoshopping. The link is right on screen and in the description if you want to check it out. They're actually pretty satisfying to look at. I'm now sending the thumbnail over to Pig to ask me if it should be 5 belts or 3. I was personally thinking 3, but I make sure whatever the person I'm making the thumbnail for gets exactly what they asked for. He did end up thinking 3 looked better, and I'm glad he did because 5 belts is very cluttered, which is exactly what I was talking about earlier. So now I also fixed the positioning on his arms to look proportionate with the rings. If you're wondering what these red lines are on my screen, it's the rule of thirds grid. I use it to make sure proportions are right and that the main focuses are properly placed. I actually don't use it the best here, but for this thumbnail, I think it ends up working out fine. If you like these videos and want a deeper dive into how I think with things like the rule of thirds and thumbnails, let me know in the comments. This is my second channel, so I'm open to a lot of ideas. Now, I'm finally rendering the images to put them into Photoshop. This is where the thumbnail process gets fun. I normally would have a background that is in the blend file, but I wanted to make it on Photoshop as an experiment. There are a lot of people that just use preset backgrounds that are already made for them in thumbnails, and a lot of the times it just doesn't work. You would need to perfectly line up the camera angle with the shot or else it won't look nice, and that's why I always make every background in Blender. But because of this thumbnail and what I'm trying to experiment with, I'm gonna make the entire background in Photoshop. As you can see, I'm trying to work with different colors and designs as the background. I knew Maxo had a very nice looking, glowy, grainy void in the background of his thumbnail, and it made everything stand out perfectly. My idea was to make everything in the background look like a bunch of colors mixed together in grain to make everything stand out from each other. Here, I experiment with a lot of different color patterns, and this is the kind of thing I go through a lot with thumbnails. Not just color patterns, but minor details that don't seem like they matter that much, but in thumbnails, they do. I've had a lot of scenarios moving back and forth with different types of thumbnails to see what kind of things look better, and colors are a big part of it. You'll actually see me change the colors at the bottom of the screen later in this video, and that's the kind of thing that makes a thumbnail do well or do bad. It doesn't seem like it, but it actually does matter that much. Now, I'm adding glow to the belts, and I just love adding these kinds of effects to things. If you couldn't tell by a lot of the thumbnails I make, I love adding things like lightning or shines and glows to make something stand out more, and I love how it looks. You can tell how much I like it by how many times I said love in that sentence. I use all of that in this thumbnail to make belts look better, and you will see how big of a difference it makes at the end. This is where I start to realize the bottom half of the thumbnail looks a little dark, and I was brainstorming ways to fix that. I started by adding a big green glow to the back of Pig to contrast his character a bit, but it kept feeling off to me. You can tell because I'm filtering through different layer styles and stuff like that. I just couldn't get it to look right. I had to pull up Maxo's thumbnail again to see how he made it, and I tried to redo the background from scratch. It did not turn out well. Again, this is all experimental to me, so I'm going back and forth with it, but it's always fun to try new things like this in thumbnails. A lot of the times I experiment with stuff in thumbnails and it ends up turning out really nice. And that's why I think you should always try these new things. For me, I wouldn't be using the lighting effects or special glows and shines if I didn't experiment. I've also made a lot of high performing thumbnails from experimenting, so doing that is a good thing. By the way, I don't know if you've noticed this yet or not, but this is my second channel. I mentioned it earlier, so if you're new or not, please subscribe. After trying to redo the background, I realized that the bottom green fog actually looked pretty nice. So I ended up sticking with that, but kind of kept the old background. And now I'm adding fog to make it look more cinematic. I love adding fog. I have these cloud brushes that I use. They are so nice. You can see I just added that shine effect that I was talking about, and I'm also adding some sun rays. These are some of the final touches that I do, but there's one final thing that I always do that makes the thumbnail look amazing at the end. And that is camera raw. I think a lot of people sleep on it, but this is truly the best thing about thumbnails. Camera raw makes everything look better and more saturated, and however you want it to look. I always use it to make a thumbnail turn from bland to saturated and very high exposure and high brightness and stuff like that. Now I'm sending the final version over to Pig to see if he likes it, and he did really like it. Most of the time I go back and forth with him, figuring out things to change, but this time he really liked it the first time, so it's a good thing. Okay, the thumbnail's done, so here is the before and after.